This is Windows 2007, a mod of Windows Vista Ultimate Service Pack 2. This mod started development around 2019 and ended development in about 2020. It never really finished, it just kind of stopped, from what I can gather due to just lack of motivation. It stopped around the same time that a similar mod called Vista C was DMCA'd, so, can you blame them, really? It was made by several people and was uploaded to the Internet Archive by GMM. Trying to find information for this has been a bit tough, but according to the Internet Archive link, that's where all these builds are found, this version of Windows was supposed to be kind of a recreation of Windows Vista Beta 2, the aesthetics around that. It's mostly visual changes, there's no different software or anything like that. There isn't really a lot going on. Still, I think it's a pretty interesting idea as somebody who prefers Windows Vista Beta builds over actual Vista. The latest build, 6021, was developed in around February of 2020, and this is the most recent build of Windows 2007. There isn't a whole lot going on with this build that's worth talking about, so instead what we're going to be doing is taking a look at all 10 builds that are linked on the Internet Archive. To do this, we're going to be using this HP Pavilion DV8000 from about 2006 or so. This is a Windows XP laptop that has an AMD Turion 64 ML32 at 1.8 GHz, 1 GB of RAM, a 120 gig hard drive, ATI Radeon Express 200M graphics for that sweet Windows Aero, and it's shipped with Windows XP but is technically Vista capable. In other words, it has Vista drivers. It also has the world's most reflective 17-inch display ever, and it sounds like a vacuum cleaner when you turn it on. Anyways, this thing normally runs Windows 2000. I don't know why, I just felt like putting something other than XP on this computer. It works, it's fine, I guess. It's just Windows 2000, there's not a whole lot going on, it's a pretty clean install. So we're going to be making that Windows 2000 plus 7. Just for good measure anyway, I backed up the old install just because I can. Right, so starting off with build 6004. This is obviously identical to normal Vista setup at this point, so there's not a whole lot to really talk about here. Presumably this would have been from 2019, but again, there's no real information. There's not even really a changelog anywhere on these builds, or at least nothing that I can find anyway, so this is all basically just changes that I can notice by just using the builds. The out-of-box experience is a bit interesting on this one because the theme is a bit different. I'll show you why in a second. Also, we have some different desktop wallpapers, including some from Windows Vista Beta 2, and this other circuit board one, which is a bit interesting. Again, I'm a sucker for Vista Beta 2, so we'll set this one. Otherwise, it's still all the same as Vista stuff at this point. It still calls the OS Windows Vista, it still has all the same backgrounds, it's all pretty much the same setup process. Something else that's a bit weird is this build appears to need a restart when it's done, but whatever, I guess. Alright, so here we are. For some reason the classic theme is the default. Not really sure why, but anyways, here we are at, well, Windows Vista Ultimate. Obviously there's no mention of Windows 2007 anywhere, but that's fine. So here's a look at the theme. In this case, the big change is the Vista Basic theme, which is more in line with one that would have been found in, I believe, Beta 2, but I haven't messed with Longhorn in forever. We'll leave that set for a little while. Anyways, I figured just to be safe I would install some drivers on this machine, just for audio mainly. Everything else, as expected, is fine. Right, so we can take a look at some of those wallpapers. Those are the most obvious change that is going on. There have been lots of new wallpapers that have been added to this build. From what I can gather, these are a mixture of stock images and community images. I think, anyway. Obviously at this stage they're pretty random, including placeholder, some real well-drawn artwork, some images I can't even show, this, and the best one of them all. There's also more images that I believe were part of Beta 2, but I don't really know. Again, I haven't really looked at these builds in a long time, so sorry. Well, some of them I know for a fact were definitely from Beta 1 and 2. They're nice wallpapers, so I'm not really complaining at all. Not that I think normal Vista's wallpapers are bad, but in a way they kind of feel stale after a while. There's also no widescreen wallpapers yet. Otherwise, that's pretty much about it. The rest of this is just standard Vista stuff. The banner still says Windows Vista and everything, so cool. Next, build 6005, and already we have a new background on the installer. Now, I don't actually know if this is part of this build. It's possible this was in 6004, and you'll see why later. Otherwise, just like build 6004, it's pretty much all the same setup stuff. This installer doesn't actually let you upgrade though, not that it really matters. I think it was down to how it was created. Also, the background isn't actually retained in the final part of setup. It goes back to the Vista one, which is a bit funny. There also is a new wallpaper, this time replacing the Vista wallpaper with this under construction wallpaper. Also, the logon screen has been updated to a new background, which is cool. It wasn't shown on the out-of-box experience, but that's fine. And you might have also noticed that the OS itself now calls itself Windows 2007 on the watermark thingy. For some reason, again, it's still set to Classics theme, not really sure why. Maybe it's something with this computer in particular. Once again, gonna install some drivers on this just because I can. As far as wallpaper changes go this time, there isn't really a lot that's different. In this case, once again, the under construction thing is the new default Vista wallpaper, but there's also some of these light auras. And there's also new widescreen wallpapers of existing wallpapers that were already on this install. There's also some new sample pictures as well, a combination of ones that were in Longhorn and other pictures as well. Though interestingly, the names are still the default ones from Vista. They haven't actually been updated yet, which is kind of funny. Also, the OS now calls itself Windows 2007. What? No. The banner has been updated to say 2007. Build 6006 has a new background again, just like 6005. One that is quite bright and looks very terrible on this laptop's display. You can see the background change when it actually loads the setup, which is a bit funny. Also, once again, the background is not retained in the final part of setup. I think this is already starting to look a little familiar at this point. It's a lot of the same. Once again, we have a new default wallpaper again, and the logon screen wallpaper is exactly the same as the last build. I think you know how this process goes at this point. Rather interestingly, this build's wallpapers revert back to how they were in 6004, including the same placeholders and everything. The only change is the new default wallpaper, which has both a standard and widescreen format one. It still replaces the Vista wallpaper, it's just that they're unspecified on this one. The sample pictures have also been reverted back to the standard Vista ones. The only other change is that the banner on WinVer has been updated to a different one again. Build 6007 retains the same wallpaper that 6006 did, so its setup is pretty much identical to the last builds. This one has a changelog that appears out of the box, and as it says, it's a pretty minor build that just has to fix some small things, so there isn't really a lot happening with this build. The banner is still the same, the wallpapers are still the same, except for this Windows 2007 Experience Lab wallpaper that's based on a wallpaper that would have been from Longhorn Milestone 5, maybe? I don't know. Now, build 6008 is a pretty interesting situation because it actually doesn't install on this computer. I thought maybe if I booted on the USB it might fix things. By the way, this is what I was talking about earlier when I said that wallpaper might have been in 6004 because when you boot directly off the media, the wallpaper isn't there. So that's interesting. Otherwise, yeah, booting off of USB just didn't do anything. I tried wiping out the old partition and nothing happened. So instead, we're going to be taking a look at build 6008 2. I don't know why these two are called the same, but that's how they were labeled on the download page. This is the Milestone 2 build of 6008. Real great naming there. I don't know what wallpaper this has because, again, it didn't work in the installer, and obviously since I just wiped out the old install, I can't install over it. This build once again has a new default wallpaper denoting Milestone 2, another one based on old Windows Longhorn builds. There's some more community wallpapers that have been added to this. I think they're decent. Otherwise, the only other changes are the Milestone 2 wallpaper in both standard and widescreen. Once again, unspecified. Next, build 6009, which seems to revert to the old wallpaper used in the first build. Kind of reminds me of Ubuntu, to be honest. I don't know why. Seems similar to the Ubuntu wallpaper from forever ago. This time, there have been some more user pictures that have been added to this one out of the box. There also has been some new sounds that have been added to this build. These are the so-called fake Windows Longhorn sounds that have gone around on the internet before. I think they're Samsung noises, but I'm sure somebody would know. It's still really fun to see them in here though. I actually really like them personally. For some reason, the community textures and vistas have been duplicated into the same tab, which is kind of weird. And all the wallpapers from a few builds ago have all returned now back to how they're supposed to be. Also, the sample pictures have returned, though once again, they're still named the same as vistas. And we can see the rest of the user picture icons that have been added to this build that weren't shown on the out-of-box experience. The WinVer dialog banner has also been updated again to say Windows 2007 Milestone 2. Build 6010 is a bit of an interesting situation because it actually can't install over the last build. This is because it's a 64-bit build. I'm not exactly sure why this change was made. All these builds up to this point have been 32-bit, but for some reason this one is 64-bit, so we have to boot off the USB again and do another clean install. And yes, I keep having to change the BIOS setting every time because this laptop's BIOS is very stupid. This one once again has a new default wallpaper again, denoting Milestone 3 of Windows 2007. And the default logon screen wallpaper has been updated to one that I like much more. Also, this is the first build I've seen on this laptop that hasn't had the classic theme enabled by default, in this case, Windows Aero. Drivers are a bit of an interesting situation on this because the audio actually didn't work. I'm not sure if maybe this is a Vista 64-bit thing. I don't know. This computer in theory should have had drivers for it, but for whatever reason, the Snappy Driver installer ones just did not want to install right. I found one that allegedly claimed to install, but it still didn't work. On this one, we have a how to file a bug report thing on the desktop. This is based on the one that was in Vista Beta and very early Windows 7 Beta. In this case, it routes you to the Windows 2007 Discord server that is dead now, I think. The sample pictures are also back, and now they have proper names for what they actually are. Build 6020 finally says Windows 2007 on the installer screen and has a new background on it as well. This is also the first one that lets you actually upgrade, though in this case, we're going from a 64-bit build to a 32-bit build, so that's not going to work, but that's fine. This build is also the first that seems to have an actual watermark in the bottom corner. The other ones didn't at all, though maybe it's somehow because I'm installing it over Windows or something, I don't know. Also, the background isn't retained on the final part setup, but it's been changed to a different one now that is more Windows 2007 themed. This one's setup is a bit different from the other builds, maybe because I installed over the other one, I don't know, but it asks for regen now on setup. The background is also the same wallpaper that was at the end of setup. There's now a new default background again, with the Let's Not Leak Our Hard Work, which is a cue from Windows 8, and Lab 06, which was one of the teams that worked on Vista during its development. The Welcome Center now has a new Aurora thing, and the OS now finally calls itself Windows 2007. The wallpapers are all the same, except there isn't a widescreen version of the Let's Not Leak Our Hard Work one. It's still this Milestone 2 one, even though this is supposed to be Milestone 3. There's also been some new custom sounds that have been added to this, or at least this is the first one I can get them working in. They might have been in 6010 or whatever, but again, the speakers didn't work in that one. They're pretty cool. I like how they sound, but the problem with them is that the sounds are cut off. So it's not terrible, but still, it's kind of strange. Maybe it was supposed to be fixed, but I don't know. And yes, the operating system calls itself Windows 2007 pretty much in most places. It's not permanent, but still. The banner has also been updated once again. Alright, I want to go to bed, so we better finish up here. Finally, build 6021. This is the last build of this, at least for the time being, but it's pretty unlikely there's probably ever going to be another build given it's been more than 4 years. Just because I'm feeling brave, I'm going to select upgrade this time. Just like the last build, there's once again a watermark in the corner. The wallpaper also still isn't consistent between the setups, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. Finally, in the out-of-box experience of this build, the theme has actually been fixed to be the proper Beta 2 theme. It's not cut off between the border and the rest of the window. Also, the sort of performance checking thing has the logon screen wallpaper now, and it actually says Windows 2007 in all of the Windows text things. Presumably they updated a string somewhere, or whatever script they used for Vista. I don't remember exactly how it's done. Obviously, because I upgraded this, .NET Framework is pissing itself right now, but that's fine, I don't care. Something I noticed was that some of the icons have been updated to the old Vista Beta ones, including the folder icons and some of the drive icons, as well as the banner. There's also a new sidebar look, kind of denoting again Vista Beta, which I think looks quite nice. There have been some new Auroras that have been added based on Vista Beta and the RTM installer screen. There's also been these buildings that have been added. I don't know if these were beta wallpapers or if they were more stock images. I believe this wallpaper is also new. I don't think it was in the other builds. Otherwise, all the wallpapers are the same, with the one unfortunate thing being there is no widescreen version of the Lab 06 wallpaper. They just didn't do it. Kind of a shame, but oh well. There's also been some new gadgets, which I believe were from Vista Beta, but I could be wrong. They're pretty similar to the ones that were in Vista. They just have different themes and stuff on them, but they still work. Well, the ones that don't need internet still work. Here's another look at some of the icons that have been changed in this build. Not all of them, only some of them. The sample pictures are all still the same, but the names are still the Vista ones, though maybe some of this could be because I upgraded it. You never know, that might screw things up. Also, there has been some more pictures that have been added. Here is all of them. Well, that was fun, I guess. That was a cool day and a half worth of filming right there. I definitely think this is a neat project, and it's worth mentioning this, again, never finished. This was not, I don't believe, intended to be the final build of this. It's just, this is kind of where it stopped. Because it wasn't the final, it's kind of hard to be really harsh on them, because, again, this is still technically a beta. And again, while I don't think it's everybody's thing, it's still quite a neat idea, to be honest. It's kind of a neat project. It's kind of a shame that it never really finished, but that's how things go sometimes. As for how usable this is on an actual computer, my general thing is I don't recommend modded versions of Windows in general on actual hardware. I mean, it's fine, but obviously this is only 32-bit, so it has to be on a pretty old computer. And it does need a product key, so it's not technically piracy. Obviously Vista isn't supported anymore, and as expected for most modded versions of Windows, this does not take well to Windows updates at all. It breaks a lot of the UI elements on this, but still, you can't do it. It does run fairly decently on this PC, So, I don't know. I might leave it on here.